welcome to the BIGWIT Podcast, a show that features conversation that involve you, inspire you, and impact you. I'm your host Dipanshu Sharma, and today we'll be talking about men's mental health. Now you may ask, why men's mental health when there's so many other things to talk about? Well, to begin with, we often hear that men have it easy, that men are tough, and of course, that men don't cry. Well, to begin with, in 2018 alone, 250 males took their life per day. That's twice as many as women. In another study, it was shown that men are more prone to heart attacks than women are. To understand this better, I have invited RANJAN, an ex-Indian Army cadet, a corporate wellness specialist. He's also the youngest male who's written a book at age 21, The Mighty Mustang. He's also one of the males who's walked across Kanyakumari to Kashmir a total of 4,000 kilometers in order to support his petition to introduce mental health into school. To understand more of ins and out on men's mental health and the challenges men face every day to day, we have offered a special insight to understand male psyche. Please stay and watch till the end.
We'll discuss the ins and outs of challenges men face day to day in their lives and offer a special insight into male psyche. Please stay and watch the full episode as I dive right into it. Hi RONIT. I want to start off right by saying hi. I just want to start off by saying you've been on my list. I've been wanting to talk to you, and mental health has been on my list for quite some time. I do realize on a personal level the gravitas of the situation, and you having dealt with so many inspirational moments in your life, which I'm going to mention as we go further. I want to start off with asking you, what was that biggest fear that you went through, especially on that day when you received that letter I've heard you talking about in forums and TED Talks especially. How was that? How did you go about it? What did you feel, and how did you let that out? How did you deal with it?
Just giving your audience a little bit of context. The letter Dipanshu is talking about is the official medical document which I got when I was in the army and I suffered from a back injury. And my DMO, which is the duty medical officer, he came up to me and he said that, your career is over. And I was declared medically unfit to continue in the armed forces, which was my, lifelong dream. And when this has happened, while there were emotions that came up, but, you're never ready for something that big. So The first stage is actually registering the fact. When I was given that letter, when the doctor went, he had a conversation with me, and I just agreed to everything what he was saying, and I did not feel anything because I had not registered. It was a couple of hours later in the evening when I realized what had just happened, and when everything just hit me like a train. That this is this is the end. I think that's where the rush of emotions came in, and a lot of things happened. Surprisingly, the sadness bit of it came later. Initially, it was more of rage and guilt. Guilt because I thought that, I had let myself down. That was the first emotion, which then led to anger. Because I was angry at myself. I was angry at the accident. I was angry at everything around me. Because in my head, it was more like, these are the events that led to me being here right now. And
give us a little perspective on what led to that letter, and what were the injuries that basically you feeling guilt and all this anger, because necessarily what I hear is that you had this purpose that you were devoted to, and you being ripped off from that's a big deal for a man. And I just wanted you to give us a little perspective on that.
Sure. So I wanted to join the army when I was in standard 8, and I prepared my entire life working towards it. My entire transformation happened because I was preparing for army, and I come from a very civilian setup, a civilian background. So it took me years to convince my family that I want to join the armed forces. I showed them my result, in a consistent basis, and that's how they finally were on board. So it meant a lot for me to be there, right? And you dream of something your entire life, and you're actually there. And I was living my life. I had prepared a blueprint for my life. I had planned everything that I wanted to do, all the major events of my life, and everything was going well. We have 6 semesters in NDA, which is the National Defense Academy. You train for 6 months, and then you 21-day break, and then you do it again for 6 terms, and then you graduate from there. So It was the end of 3rd term. And what happened was, before I tell you, there are a couple of these small concepts you need to understand. So Army is a very team-based institution. So there's a concept called buddy pair. So let's say if you and I are part of a team of 10, even that team of 10 will be divided into sub-teams of 5, a pair. I will be assigned a buddy pair, and my buddy pair and I eat together, shit together, cry together, get screwed together, everything. We do it together. And he's my academy brother. And if there's a choice between, saving his life and my life, I have to save his life. That's how the tradition works. That's how we were honed. And so we were going through one of these exercises. I cannot go into the specifics, but there are different sessions in the Army. We have rope session, hockey session, puke session, drain session. So we were called for a rope session, and I fell from ropes. I fell from around 15 to 20 feet on my back. This happened on 28 January 2017.
I love how specific that is.
Yeah. You remember some dates, some dates you cannot just get out of your mind.
Definitely.
I was in the hospital bed, paralyzed for the next 47 days down my hip. So I remember every single day. I used to write every single day. So, when you prepare something, and I've heard about stories of, let's say failure or people not being able to live their dream. But then, once you finally get there and you're living that, and you're just like, you're just there, like 1.5, 2 more years, and you become an officer, right? And
like I'm close, I'm there, just
exactly
a little bit more.
And it just suddenly comes down, and you're never ready for anything like that. I think nothing prepares you for that. And even I was not prepared. I was this Josh type Enthu cutlet who was just like, I'm going to finish my training, and I was not ready for it. So, initial moments were just me being numb, me trying to register what had just happened. And then the entire, emotional roller coaster came later.
Wow, that has been quite a journey for you. I definitely feel that. Talk to us a little bit about, let's dive right into the Indian society aspect of mental health. So we hear a lot about certain glorified sections of this is how men should be, or he's the provider of the family. And I'm aware that things are changing now. But in Indian society, certain masculine traits have been exaggerated, like lack of emotions and self-sufficiency, etc., dominance for once, which definitely lead to this false narrative of what man is supposed to be, right? Phrases like man up or like big boys, they don't cry. We've heard this a lot. And how should one deal with that, and what kind of work can we do to sort of stay away from that toxicity, that masculine toxicity that is a reflection of how we are treating men and how we're growing up in certain environments? What would you say on that?
So before dealing, the only way to do is education. And I want all of us to go back into the basics of gender, right? A lot of us, I think more than 60-70% of us do not know the difference between gender and sex. We think it's the same thing. We don't know gender is something that, it's been assigned. It's a social construct. Sex is your biological sex, which makes you into a male and a female. The term man, woman, or any other gender identity, it's an identity which is socially constructed. And when you construct something, you have to pull in some of the elements, what you think is the most prevalent ones, and then you bring it on, which means that obviously there will be lack because it's a construction, right? So first is to understand the difference between what a male is and what a man is. Man is a constructed image that we've created. That is first. Second is, if you read about gender roles, the way that our conditioning works, a male is supposed to have, traditionally supposed to have masculine character, masculine traits. And a female is supposed to have feminine traits. Now, the thing is, nowhere historically it is defined that way, but we have kind of evolved and conditioned ourselves into believing that way, because that's how it's been passed on through generation. The same knowledge has been passed on. And what you will realize that biologically there's no such thing that masculine traits are only assigned to male or feminine. There are different proportions. Men usually have higher levels of what we call the masculine traits, but that doesn't mean that they are the only ones who have masculine traits and they cannot have feminine traits. And the problem is that we want to create these demarcation. And like what I say, that masculinity and femininity, there's a semi permeable membrane in the middle, which means that there can be an interchange of ideas, of nature, of personality and everything. But we want, so in sociology, if you read everything, most of these social institutions, the purpose of them is social control, because the only way to control a huge mass is to actually segregate them through creating these boundaries. And I see, and sociologically, historically, this is what we've done when it comes to gender. So we've put men on one box and women on one box because it's easier to deal with them, right?
Mind control.
We call it the structural, functional aspect of it. But the problem is, when you do this demarcation, people who identify as highly masculine creatures and as males, they're fine. But then the problem is, right now there's an entire spectrum of gender which is untouched, and we only take care of the two ends of the spectrum, and we do not take care of the entire. And that's the issue when it comes to gender role. When we talk about emotions, even our emotions lie in an entire spectrum. But when you assign a certain extreme to a certain emotional bandwidth, right, and then the other one, and then you expect them to not flow in the middle, then you're actually restricting them. Exactly. And you're actually restricting them to express and feel and process the other emotions that they might have. And the problem with that is A, you alienate them. B, they're not educated about the fact that having other emotions is not a bad thing. And C, what we have actually done is we actually attack people on both sides. In this case, men, we attack them if they want to come out of that box and want to express or feel more emotions. I think this is where the problem lies. So the first thing is actually to educate the boys in our school systems right now. Teach them about gender, teach them about how gender and sex is different, how traits, how masculinity and femininity are different things, and it does not. It's if you draw a Venn diagram, there's so many overlaps. But what we have been told is that there's separate sets for everything, and which is a very incomplete information. So I think that is
very
the first
misrepresented thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that is one. So this is the problem. Now another problem is that this is glorified, because we're an emotional country, India, and we like romanticizing everything. And this is something I was actually making fun of it last night with a friend of mine. But this is a sad truth that if there's something problematic that I do, the only way or the most common or easier way for me to be okay and get okay with it is the fact that I glorify it. For example, right now, if Deepanshu, like right now you're talking to me and you tell me, ki, bro, I want to talk about this thing, but I've not spoken about it to anyone. And what I usually would do in an Indian setup is like, yeah, bro, you're the man, just keep it with yourself. You don't need anyone to
put him on a pedestal. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Now growing up, we have been rewarded. Men have been rewarded to, keep their emotions with themselves, not talk to anyone, because that's what a man is, someone who just deals with all by themselves. There's very interesting / controversial book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And it kind of throws light on a lot of things, this segregation that we're talking about, men going into their caves, not wanting to talk, and then, they're expected to just take their time and come out and all of that. Right. Now, the thing is, some men have the emotional bandwidth to do that. But then when I say men, we are not just talking about a type of men. Even in men, there are different personality traits because everybody's different, right? So we have to be more inclusive, because when I tell you that Deepanshu is a man, even I'm trying to alienate you, which is again bad for your mental health and emotions.
Because essentially, at the end of the day, what is a man?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what I hear from you sharing all those beautiful insight is that A, there has to be acceptance. from all spectrum of tastes in men, thoughts, and B, there has to be a basic education which promotes that acceptance.
That's true. And even if you look at historically, how this goes back into division of labor and when industrialization came in, right? When men were usually given a sign because they are mostly biologically stronger than the other gender. So more of the machinery work and more of the logistical work were taken by the men, and more of, let's say, admin or, something which is not as physically draining as the other ones were taken by the other gender, mostly females, right? And that kind of gave a sense of, because industrialization was this milestone, there was this paradigm shift, and this is kind of the base of our entire generation right now. And that entire power imbalance has been carried on through different social institutions. This carries on, this is gender, this carries on in education, then marriage, then, education, everything, occupation. Now you see there's a gap, even the entire thing about, pay gap or all of the other issues, these gender issues that we have, all because it started at a certain point wherein there was a power struggle between the two genders. And we started it that way. And we were supposed to ideally, bring it equal. But what we did was
we got used to that.
Got it in the same way. Yeah, we just got it parallelly. So there's always this gap that we have. And we never address this gap, right? And we actually become defensive if let's say, the feminist movements that came in after that, for people who are fighting, it's not equality that is the way to achieve equality. It's equity that will lead to equality. Right?
Yeah.
The aim is equality. That's exactly. But then, you have to kind of, how do I put it? Like, if I have 10 mangoes in this and 5 mangoes in this, and if I want to have same mangoes, I will have to stop eating for a bit or stop taking for a bit and let the other hand have till the time they're at 10. And because one thing that we do is that we take pride in where we are. Again, when I say we, collectively as a gender, because, if you look at the majority, a lot of shared thought is there. Your thought, my thought might be very different, but right now I'm speaking collectively from the traditional gender dynamics of this country right now. So what I would think is, I am in a privileged position, right? So I do not want to let it go. And I will try to attack anything that tries to attack me, because attack is the best kind of defense. B, what happens is that I know that the other gender is equally capable as I am. But if I give them the equal opportunity, they just might overtake. And that will make me uncomfortable because I'll have to work harder.
I think that's
let me just maintain the status quo.
I think that's like a big thing, what you just pointed out. I think you hit the nail on the head with this insecurity of women taking over. And I think that is not a healthy way to go about it. That is not a healthy way.
And I tell you, every single man in this country is insecure. We hide it in our ego, and we hide it, which is why we're so quiet. We hide it. Every man is insecure. It's as simple as that. So, but the thing is, again, this is where all the other industries come into picture. Though your media has a big role to play. You see, how the actor is glorified, or major roles are taken by them. There's pay gap there as well. In education, the kind of textbooks we have, even textbooks, there's a clear segregation among the roles. Growing up, you have the pink blue project, wherein like your parents try to give you a certain gender. You have blue color for the man and pink color for the lady, and then there's no interchange and all of that. And I think all stems from the fact, this is something that I tell from a very rational level, that if I tell you, like for example, if I tell you, Dipanshu, do you have green hair? I'm telling you have green hair. Will you believe me if I tell you have green hair?
No.
Right. Why? Because for a fact that you don't have green hair, you have black hair.
Right.
But let's say you have some strands of white hair. You're aging a little, and you're not okay with that. And I tell you, Dipanshu, you have white hair. You're going to start defending. You're going to start pushing back. Because know somewhere deep down in the back of your mind that that is true.
And I don't want that to come out.
Exactly. Which is why most of the Indian males get like hyper aggressive the moment you try pointing
I don't have white hair, by the way.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So my point is, they get extra defensive, and that is where I'll raise my eyebrow. I'm like, why are you being so defensive? Because if there was nothing to worry about, you would not have bothered that much. But the fact that you've become so hyper aggressive, I might think there is something.
It stems in something.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are a lot of institutions
Wonderful.
that are promulgating the entire thing, and it's not just about. So education is just first step. Then is sensitizing the other genders as well. Because when I say that masculinity or toxic masculinity or this entire system of patriarchy, which is the stem cause behind this entire gender imbalance, men are not the only gender who propagate this. The other genders also help in their ways to be the same way. Because, for example, let's say if I look at a traditional love story in India, let's say a Bollywood love story in India,
basic dynamic that we've been laid out.
If I'm a cis het man, my girlfriend or my fiance expects me to behave or act in a certain way, and that is again in a way trying to put me in a certain box and be like, you behave like that. So every gender has its role to play. It's just that in our case, we have
more
the bigger,
inclusive.
like we have the bigger piece of the pie. That doesn't mean there are not more pieces, and then it's more of a collective effort. But then there's so many steps that can be done, but it starts with education. It starts with conversations like these amongst men. Because if you see a lot of these podcasts, a lot of these YouTube videos in which people talk about gender, out of 10 videos, there's only one guy who talks about it, and it's just women talking about it. And the thing is, sometimes this is what I've seen when I talk to my clients, when I give talks and all. As a man, when I speak about certain things, a lot of men resonate because they have this habit of listening to the bro or listening to the father figure.
It feels more familiar.
Exactly, because they think that, okay, I might have gone through the same journey, I might have gone through the same struggle, and they
resonate to that.
Exactly. So which is why more men need to come out and start expressing and tell the other fellow men that it is totally all right. What you've been doing, what you've been thinking, I get it. I have been there. I've done the same thing. But now you have the resources and you have the access to grow beyond, grow further, and spread your wings.
Right. I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. That was so insightful, and I can't wait for you guys to hear this, because this has been a conversation which has long been overdue for us men to sort of shine light on. And I know like a lot of people are already doing that, but it's high time that we step up for this. This kind of makes me conscious about one more thing that I want to point out here, is the fact that how vulnerable men are because of that lack of conversation that we just talked about. Studies show that male suicide do not really happen because of depression. It happens due to their inability to cope successfully with relationship failure, conflict, unemployment, certain issues like that, family conflict. If it is normalized for men to open up about these problems, suicide rates can be cut down, if not stopped, and that can lead to a big change. But what changes do you think Indian families need for men to do better emotionally?
First of all, the roots of it goes back into when we were hunters and gatherers, in which
the basic survival.
The basic survival, and the male, I would not say men, but the male members of the family were supposed to go and fight off each other. They had to kill each other in order to procure food. So this survival instinct, this competition has been in our genes since forever, right? Since the beginning of time.
It's in the DNA.
And we have carried that competitive nature, which is good. What we have also carried, which is not very good, is the fact that we just have to compete in order to survive, and competition is the only way to survive. But as we grew, and right now we live in a very complex society, and right now the answer is not competition, the answer is collaboration. And I think we have not evolved, or we kind of restricted ourselves to be open to the new definition of how we should live. And which is why like if like right now a man and a man talking, like give a lot of these podcasts, right? Most of this invitation around gender roles comes from a host who's a lady, right? Hardly. You're probably the second guy in the past 3 or 4 years who wanted to talk to me about gender roles in an open platform. And I've been talking for 3-4 years about this now, right? You're probably the second guy. So because again, even people on the other side, for example, you're the host right now, even you have certain biases, and everybody has certain biases, and I get it, but my point is to go beyond. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the first thing we need to do is, instead of competing, we need to collaborate, right? That is A. B is the fact how Indian societies will come up, even because we live in a patriarchal setup, right? When the
Yeah.
father is the bread and butter owner and the mother is
Yeah.
supposed to take care of the everything and all that.
Right.
And we live in a certain society. But now we've come to a point wherein we realize that the entire family, all the members of the family can collectively be the bread and butter owner, and then collectively can work on the domestic things and collectively grow and then collectively contribute to society. They can all do that.
Right.
But then again, the thing is, for me, if I'm a man, right, if I'm privileged, it's easier for me to be in that momentum, inertia, Newton's second law, unless there's an external force, I'm not. So which is why, like, for example, even now that I talk about these things, I had a big hit in my life because I had my mental health journey and my emotional health journey. That was this big force that came, and now I talk about it. I might not have done that because there was no education in my side of the state that I live in. So even this big incident happened to me, and now I talk about it because then I realize I need to learn about this.
This generational sort of, I wouldn't like to say it a cult, but a generational way of thinking, and a way of living.
Trend, it's trend because it serves you. It serves. And the thing is, you have to ask yourself, what is serving you and what is the long-term gain? And we live in a society where we just look at the shorter picture. We don't look at the bigger picture. We look at what's tomorrow. Is this serving me tomorrow? If it's serving me tomorrow, it's fine. At the cost of other people. What we don't look at is like 1 year down the line. It's going to hit me. Yeah, it's going to bite me back my ass, because if we say patriarchy, the fact that men glorify this entire alpha male scenario and toxic masculinity and all of that, it comes back and bites back in the ass. Because if I'm someone, like I have this tattoo that I'll show you. It's an alpha male written and the male is struck off.
I love that.
Because a lot of us, it's a very marketed term, alpha male, and that's how there's a YouTube channel that I used to follow. It's called Alpha, and it has like crores of subscribers, and I love that guy. But the thing is, now I have so many issues with a lot of things he says. Like, I still love that guy's work ethic and a lot of things he said about life. But then it comes to the gender part, I have my issues and my biases towards it. My point being that, if you really want to know about what an alpha is the leader of the pack. This comes from the animal kingdom. And if you actually read about the animal kingdom, most of the alphas are females. In most of the, leaders of the pack are females. So if you're really talking about that, talk rational, talk straight. But the thing is, for me, and this, a lot of marketing also goes behind in this. If you read the case study of how cigarettes came in, how Marlboro came in, the kind of gender propagation of this toxic masculinity used to do. If you look at the entire the culture of non-vegetarian food in India, all these major joints like McD and KFC, like there were legit advertisement which said like, eat like a man, men eat like steak, and all of that. Exactly, right? So marketing has to do a lot of things, and the kind of content we consume, the kind of literature we study, because as a generation now, we don't read too much from the academic literature, because that is boring, right? What we consume is media, mostly social media. Exactly. And what you see in front of you is what you actually carry on. And if it's something that you've been seeing since forever, you actually internalize it, and then you think that is your reality. There's a quote which says that, if you lie about something enough number of times, you'll start living that. You start believing in that. That might become your truth. And this is something that has come in terms of gender roles as well. Because as a man, I have been told that I need to put everything in myself. I'm not supposed to express. I am supposed to attack on anyone who tries to evade into my space. And because I've been living this definition, I've been seeing everything around me, be it love stories, be it family stories, be it my education story, my career story, I start living that life. And when somebody comes up to me and tells me, Ronit, this is wrong, I will not accept it, because I'm like, this is all my life. If you tell me that, I'm basically saying my entire conditioning has amounted to nothing.
Right. It becomes your belief system, because it goes back to what James Clear mentions in his book Atomic Habit, that the more you surround yourself with the people which are aligned with your goal, or so to say, in this case, the content or the data or the internet entertainment that you surround yourself with, that basically essentially over the time becomes your belief system. And then when someone's pointing out at it, you're like, oh, no, this is all me. Like, if this is not me, then who am I? And then there's this fear that comes in the picture, and you don't want to see this.
If you want to quote the same book, James Clear itself, Atomic Habits, the compounding rule, the 1%
There you
rule,
go.
right?
There you go.
Same applies with your education as well.
Yeah.
Every single day you're being told 1% don't express your emotion, 1% becomes your reality after one point. Right? It just compounds. And I think compounding works in everything, in good ways and bad ways, because it's all about
exactly. I was just about to say it works out on both spectrums.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Beautiful.
coming back to your question, when you said, what can Indian families do, is start reading about family as an institution. Start reading about roles of people in the family, not gender roles, but let's say there's a family. Family is a unit, right? And there are certain elements, certain goals that a family have, right? And look at these independently. Do not look if there's about earning, then the father is supposed to do that. Do not do match and all. Just keep this column separately, this column separate, and then bring it together, and then share all the roles and all together. And this does take time. Like even in my family right now, right? We have come a long way now that we share a lot of things. I would not right now say that the power dynamics is equal in my house. It is not, and it might not be in the next 10 years as well. But it is very different from 10 years back. 10 years, there was a clear demarcation between everything that
regular work.
There was a sense of fear. Exactly. And it takes regular work, consistent work, and you have to keep pushing. Because I keep telling people that it's not the fact that as a cis-het man in India, I am definitely privileged. And there's nothing wrong in being privileged. But if you being privileged and not doing anything about it is harming any other gender, then you are at fault. And there is something you should be doing about this, right?
Because it becomes hazardous then.
Exactly. So I think we need to, and it's not about changing the society and all. I just tell people, just the person sitting left to you and the right to you, just start talking about these things, and then that will go a long way instead of trying to change the entire society. That's not how it works. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Beautiful. Tell me about, because I know that you give personalized sessions as well. What has come up to be the most common challenge for the men that we face in our country at the moment?
So this is an interesting question, because I had a male client, I think two days back, and I'll tell you this pattern I've sensed in male clients. If it comes to emotional things, if it's about goal setting and accountability and all of that, that's a different ballgame altogether. When it comes to emotional stuff, never have I seen a man, I won't say never, but like most often than not, I've seen a man and they'll never talk about what the actual issue is. So for example, there's a certain client that I had, I think a couple of months back. He came up to me and said that, RONIT, I want to lose weight. Okay. I'm like, okay, cool. We can work around that and all of that. But then while he was talking about, I asked him, why do you want to lose weight? And I saw he was hiding a lot of things. He was generalizing a lot of things. I realized this is not what he's come from. And after like 40 minutes of conversation and me asking them a couple of these powerful questions, turns out it was not at all about weight loss. It was about this trauma he had from his breakup 2 years ago, and him feeling less of a man. Yeah, him feeling less of a man because he was cheated on. And then his entire self-esteem took a huge hit, and he never tried to recover from it because he just shunned himself. And that was the issue. So the thing is, a lot of us, our main issue, we just put a lot of these other mundane, normal ass issues in front of it, so that because we don't want to be judged, right? And I think this bites back in our ass, because see, it's my job that I will peel off every layer and come to your, because you've paid me and you're here. But the thing is, you're not going to find professionals everywhere. So, and I know it takes strength, but I tell people that there's strength in being vulnerable, Right. I mean, I can be an all alpha and I can walk inside a room and become the boss. Yeah, become the boss of the room. But what it actually takes, what is even more powerful, is actually walk into a room of men, me being a man, and start talking about, I feel shitty, and I feel that I'm not, being able to contribute, and that is main strength. Not me telling, I can chug, 3 bloody pints of beer and I can, lift bloody 200, 300 on my bench. That is not, that is strength. I get it. But even beyond that is when you can open up. That's real strength.
I love how our conversations around all these issues that we're discussing around men's mental health is sort of in some way, form or manner are coming back to fear-based. fear-based,
Yeah.
fear-based insecurities or traumas or be it vulnerability. Like I love what you just said about finding power in vulnerability. That is something beautiful, and that is something that I feel like needs to be glorified. That is the marketing that I want to be doing. That is something that I want to stand behind and be like, no, this is the path. That's something that you see six-pack guys chiseled in the gym. Yeah, sure, that's great. But is that sustainable? This is something that will stay with you. It'll become a part of you. But yeah.
So in army, we have this term called funda. Okay. Basically, the basics, your fundamentals, your basics are called funda.
Right.
And and our seniors try to get our fundas right. And I think as a society, our fundas are not straight. And the thing that you just said, right? Let's say a guy with a six-pack chiseled, V taper, which is the ideal definition of a man according to the media.
Alpha man.
The thing is, alpha man. And the problem with that is we live in a world wherein we think we live in an either and or world, that it's either this or that. There's no in between, right? But I think we need to strive towards a world, a society wherein it's more of an and society. It's like, oh, you, and you as well, and you as well, and you as well, right?
Acceptance.
So, yeah, a six-pack guy who bloody deadlifts 500 pounds is as man as this other, what called dad bod does this term, right? Dad bod guy who let's say writes poems or makes art, couple of things that are traditionally seen as a very masculine trait. He is equally of a man, dude, and in some ways he might just have more, because when you talk about strength, so there's deliberate strength, there's your physical strength, there's your emotional strength, there's your mental strength, there's your societal strength as well, a lot of other strength as well. Just because you're physically strong does not mean you're a man. You might you might deadlift 800. Like I've seen people who bloody, bench press 300, but can't have a single conversation looking into someone else's eye. I'm like, that is not strength. Yeah, exactly. They're very insecure. So when we talk about strength, we have to look at all the parameters of strength. When we actually weigh in all these, when you factor everything in, we'll realize that everybody is the same. We're just like, some of them are good in this department, not very great at this. Some of them are good at this department, not great. We have kind of like dropped our lens just to look at this, focus at just this factor. This is the defining factor of a man, but that's not the case. All of these are defining factor of man.
How does one go about analyzing his or her own level of emotional, mental, physical intelligence and all these different sectors, which basically contribute to your mental health and your fitness? I would like to use the word fitness. How would you suggest that one could what kind of tools one could use, or what kind of conversations can we have in and around that?
Okay. So there are two answers to this. First is the qualitative answer, and second is the quantitative answer. Quantitative answer, physical mein, again, how much, your stamina, speed, this is one part of it, but then, your blood count, your vitamin levels, your lifestyle, your choices, your hair, nails, everything, not just what looks pretty, but what's inside our body as well. Most of us men have B2 deficiency. Most of us. B2 deficiency, iron deficiency. So this is physical. Then there's mental, there are like mental emotion, there is psychometric tests.